one seed here, another in the middle, and another on the other side, leaving a space of about 5 centimeters between each of the seeds. The reason behind leaving the space is because eventually these seeds will develop roots. And when the roots grow, you want to leave enough space so that they don't do this. Are we together? Yes. I don't have to use the word there. You understand what I mean? Don't get confused, okay? So when you bring them too close, it becomes a problem. But we're actually saying again, and I will reiterate, I will always keep referring to the principle. We talk about high standards that are maintained even in the planting. And you want to place them in a straight line. And they are, I'm looking at the hole from the top. But what is underneath the basin? 3 centimeters of soil. Yeah. And what is underneath the 3 centimeters of soil? Manure. Manure. How much quantity of manure was there? 500. It isn't 1 cup. 500 ml. When you go to the hospital, the doctor will say, take 2 tablets 3 times a day. Or take 5 ml. He won't tell you use 1 spoon. Because as I was saying yesterday, the spoons in Western Kenya are bigger than the spoons from Nairobi. It has to be very specific. We have to be very specific as to what quantities we are using. Okay? So sufficient spacing, 5 centimeters in between. And all right, if you look at photograph number 5, you can see there is a space left in between them, right? So, and all aligned. We are not just throwing the seeds into the hole as we move. For purposes of finishing quickly, I'm going to watch Arsenal versus Man City or Man U. Okay? We really want to exert as much effort and as excellently as possible. So there you are. Once you've placed in the seed, what is left for you then to do is to cover. The covering is not this one, like Chris was demonstrating. The covering is, you can use your hand gently, make sure it is done well. And the cover is flat, you don't leave a basin, because again, you don't want any flooding happening. So you're covering with the soil that was left on the one side. So this is the soil that you return back, and eventually then you bring up your mulch. Are we clear? Any questions?
You don't want a basin.
I don't want a basin. Basin. What is a basin?
It's a cow.
Kind of a cow.
Yeah.
That actually draws too much water. Already, before you planted, there was a basin that attracted so much water. Okay. It's not going to be a very big deal with maize, especially if you leave a very shallow basin, but you really want to bring it back level at the end of the day. Okay. All right. One of the things we actually talk about is, of course, some seeds or some seedlings will actually be prone to not grow well when there is water logging. So it is easier just to say, return back the soil and let it be flat. Unless there are specific seedlings that you're instructed to use mounds or basins. For maize, we are just saying, leave it flat. Okay. Are we together?
Yeah.
All right. Any other question?
Yeah, we see this problem more in conventional farming because people dig a hole, throw the seed, kick soil, the soil returned is not as much as what was taken out.
Yeah.
Then it sits there, then you'll get a heavy rain. The rain will sit there for a day and rot the seeds. So we don't want to imitate that. We believe that the moisture in that environment is already enough. Yeah. No need sitting water.
And then, Griffin already touched on, I'm now jumping off to number 6, the mulching process, because again, you really want to make sure the mulch comes up immediately after planting, and you'll be done with your planting. So when you talk about the planting process for me is not concluded until mulch is brought back. Then I can say, now I have planted. Don't wait 2 weeks before you start bringing the mulch to the farm, because again, the benefits you will already probably be able to achieve with immediate mulch will be lost. Right? Moisture.
So the mulching is after germination?
No.
It's before germination, after the seed,
Immediately
after you've covered.
After. And in fact, it can be, you see, you can actually look at it in two ways. That the mulching must be done immediately after the planting. Alternatively, before planting, the mulch should have already been there anyway.
Yeah.
All right? So one of the things we said, even yesterday, we said, when you go back home, as bad as your farm may look,
Just cover it.
put in mulch. Make sure there's mulch. All right? Don't go and uproot the crops that you've already planted. We are going systematically. What is already there, let it be, but mulch. But next season, make sure that there is sufficient mulch available so that after planting, even as you prepare, even before the rains come, as you prepare, there is sufficient mulch ready. We are also saying that do not do too much preparation beyond what you can manage. So if you don't have enough mulch to do holes all the way to the gate, don't go that way. Only prepare where you're going to be able to ensure that there is enough mulch, there is enough inputs, and you can manage it effectively, either yourself as an individual or with workers. Yeah.
If you mulch immediately after planting, won't it block the germination? How will the maize
All right,
come?
another good question. Will the maize be blocked? What was the standard? 100% cover. How thick? 2.5 centimeters thick. The maize will be able to grow through the mulch. The maize will be able to grow through the mulch. Now, again, as I said, principle is the same. Approach could be different. For beans, you can't do that. Because the bean grows differently. You have to leave room for it to grow or to emerge. Within a number of days, not really 6, but probably 7 to 10 days, the maize will actually begin to germinate. You'll be able to see the maize coming off of the ground or coming through the mulch. The beauty about farming God's way is that because you've used a high standard in your application of the inputs, a high standard in the planting of the seed, it is highly likely that all your seeds will be germinating on the same day. It's not like you'll wait 2 weeks before you see emergence on one section, and 2 weeks ago there was already emergence happening. 1 week later you find there's some maize at this height, and on the other spot there is maize at this height. They're all growing almost relative at the same time, if you keep the standard. Okay? One of the things that you then need to do is at some point, probably 2 to 3 weeks, you want to engage in something called thinning. Thinning basically means that you are removing out of the tree that you had. If they all germinate, you're going to have to take out one of them. Are we together? And how does that?
Up here quickly. Or just shrink it a bit.
So thinning is basically the idea of taking out one seedling from every planting station, and I'm saying that cautiously. Every is not the actual word to use, but generally speaking, you're trying to remove one per planting station if all three germinate. But there is also a kind of a system that you have to use. In this process of thinning, you are looking at 3 planting stations simultaneously. So you're looking at 1 planting station, 2 planting stations, 3 planting stations. And then observing and determining which ones you're going to pull out. The general principle is that you really want to get one out, and that one should be the weakest one in each of the planting stations. Are we together? When the lion goes into the mara, what kind of animal does it look for? The weak one, the emaciated one, or the smaller one, or the oldest one that can't run. Those are the kinds. It's a system that God created in nature. That there are some that must be removed so that the stronger ones continue to survive. Okay, so we have an illustration here whereby 3 are being looked at the same time, and the individual removing the weakest. That one is removed because it's weak. You notice it's not as tall as the others. And that one. But where you have a situation where all 3 are looking strong, then you remove the one in the middle. Are we together?
Yeah.
If you find a situation where one planting station has
I
three,
need my phone. Eventually. It's still growing? Okay. Is it still showing the picture? It went to.
Yes.
You're now looking at my family.
so if you find a planting station that has all three seedlings strong, then it is the middle one that is taken off. Okay? And yes, the principle then is that ultimately, in 3 planting stations, you want a total of 6 seedlings. In 3 planting stations,
Use that's not very visible.
it's not very visible. Okay. So in 3 planting stations, you ultimately want to have a total of 6 seedlings left. So it could be 2, 2, and 2. And here we get to a situation whereby, depending on which one is weakest, depending on which one is removed, if they're all strong, you could actually end up in a situation where you only have 1 and 2, and in this instance you left all the seedlings so that they are 3, and for a total of 6. It does not make much sense now, but let me use a practical example we normally use in our trainings. I'll request 9 people to come to the front. 9 seedlings, please come to the front. 9 seedlings. So we'll have 3 here, and 3 in the middle. We need 4 more. 1, 2, 3. Yes. Okay. Sorry, you can hang in there. So let's move a little bit to the edge, and then we can have 3. Now you are going to be the farmers. You're going to tell me. You're going to tell me which seedling to remove from each of the 3 planting stations. Now let's start here. Which seedling do I remove?
The first one, the same.
So we are left with 2 over here. This lot.
This side.
The red.
This seedling. Okay, come. Yeah, this way.
The middle one.
The middle one.
Yeah, how many are we left with?
6.
How many are we left with? 6. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Let's have another situation. Let's have one. Let's have you stay there. Let's have you stay here. So we have 1 planting station, 1 planting station, 1 planting station. What do? We need to remove
From that one.
Okay.
Yes.
Is that clearly understood? So that we're left with 6. Now let's have an interesting scenario. Sit here. Sorry. Okay, so we have only got 1 that survived in the first planting station, and there is 2 that survived, and there is 3 that survived. What should we do?
Don't remove earlier.
Okay.
We don't remove this migration.
Why do we leave it as it is? Because there are 6 ones. I know I mentioned you leave them as they are, but there is an interesting point she mentioned here, that we take her. No, we take it.
But if we are going to take it there, remember there is a period that it will stop growing because of the interference of the root, and it will not grow to the same height as that one, and we will not acquire the uniformity we were looking for.
Okay, so that's an interesting point, that there is some interference, and I just use his words. It will take a while for it to recover and keep up, although, and many times it doesn't really survive at the end of the day. The moment you try to transplant a maize seedling, it will not survive. So it's just better you leave them as they are. So 3, 2, 1 for a total of 6. So the principle is, at the end of the day, you always want 6 seedlings. You not only look at 1 station, you look at 3 together. And after looking at those 3, you look at the next 3 planting stations as you go. All right? So you really have to be careful, because it's easy to forget which one did I look at last. Was it this one or was it this one? And then you get confused along the way. All right? I hope that's clear.
Can I ask a question?
Thank you so much.
What happens to the spacing there?
The spacing is still okay. And remember, you've applied nutrients in all three. You're really not going to get into a situation of competition or I think the other question that arises is when people say, if that is what I'm going to do, why don't I just plant two and go? Why waste time, 3 and then come back?
And waste seed also.
And waste seeds, right? But there is also the idea that every time you buy a seed from any seed company, or you buy a bag of seeds, when you read the pack, you will be able to notice that there is always going to be a percentage germination rate indicated.
Yeah.
So for maize, it could be 85% germination rate. What does that tell you? That only 85 out of 100 will germinate. So if you started off with 2, it means 85% of what you planted will not grow already. So you start off at a worse off position. So ultimately you are still left with less than 6 per 3 planting stations. Okay? Right, 2 questions. First one.
I
And
always
second.
learned that maize likes to be single. And that as soon as it touches the other plant, even if it is weak in that stage,
Yeah.
it will lose yield, which you won't see. And even when they grow as 2.
Okay.
And it seems like, I don't know if it's the continent, but on the other continents, always 2, at least 2. So even southern.
So there are different planting designs all over the world that people use. Some do 1, some do 2. Some make sure there is all these kinds of spacings. But in Farming God's Way, through testing and through, let me just use the word testing. Scientifically, it has been proven that for maize, when you start with 3 and then thin to 2, and using a spacing of 60 by 75 centimeters as your planting spacing, you get the optimal harvest. As opposed to somebody who uses any other type of arrangement or of configuration. So 60 by 75, and always making sure you start with 3 and then thin down to 2. Then you are always going to be able to get your optimal harvest. Brian Aldridge, I think at his best was probably getting, I don't know, 100, close to 190 bucks per acre.
13 tons?
13 tons per
hectare?
Per hectare, yeah. Which is quite substantial.
I may not have it right, but I think it's somewhere around there.
And then remember also, who is our target group that we are looking at? The poor who has not, I think Griffin, you are saying, what is the harvest of that individual that got the least, bugs per acre? Was it even bugs or was it kilos? I have personally met and trained a lady whose worst harvest before she implemented Farming God's Way. She actually got 4 kilograms from 1 acre. 4 kilos from 1 acre the year 2015. She carried all her harvest in 2 hands. And that was a very dry year of maize. 2 kilos, that's it. And the worst thing about this lady is that she passed away that same year because of depression and all this frustration. So we are getting people out of that kind of scenario and driving them to a better off position. And we are saying this is what we really want to start off with. If you get to a position where later on you can now even implement irrigation and begin using equipment, that is good. At least you're at that level already. Okay? Can I take one last one, please? And then I'll take the others privately because of time.
Okay, my name is John. The lesson is really interesting. I'm so interested in the example you gave just right here.
Yeah.
What do we consider when we are doing thinning? Because in group 2, we saw her as unhealthy. But when I look at her, she is very healthy. So is it shortness or what are the factors that we consider?
Yeah, that's a good question. At this stage, for the most part, the main thing you'll be looking at is the height, generally speaking. Because it's still at a very young age, the height is basically what you'll be looking at for the most part, right? So the shorter one, ordinarily will go. Okay? All right?
And if they're all equal, the middle one.
The middle one. They're all equal. Okay.
Suppose.
Now, this is the last one. Let me speak like a pastor. This is the last thing.
So
that I
if you
have to
speak
say.
like a pastor, there won't be a last one. If you're one of these pastors, I'm coming in for a landing. I'm about to finish.
Sure.
That means you have 2 more hours on your bench.
My question is,
Yes.
suppose in one planting station, none
Supposing one planting station,
of them.
none survived. That's a
Yeah.
good question. Because if this is the planting station where none survived, how many are you left with here? 6. And you're okay. You don't have to do anything.
So that one can remain like that.
It's just 1 here and there. Yeah.
So I think your question is also leading to the idea that supposing it's 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. The basic principle again is that if you find a large area, because that's what I was actually coming to next. If you find a portion that has a large area where there is 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, then there is a process we now call gapping, which you now bring in your seed, which you should have soaked overnight, and then just bring them and push them into the soil, the planting stations, and keep adding, so that you ultimately remain with your 2, 2, 2, 2, 2. One of the things about soaking your maize, it's quite an interesting thing overnight, is that it begins to grow in the container. The other thing that happens is that the unhealthy seeds will float, and the ones that have a seriously high percentage rate possibility of germination will sink. So you can almost be sure that all the ones that will sink will germinate, unless something happens or some rodents come and pick up what you planted. Okay? Now I can proceed.
So they grow to the same height.
The difference will not be significant.
But it must be done 7 to 10 days after planting it.
Yeah.
7 days after planting, not after emergence, after planting. So you must very quickly discern whether it's about to germinate or it's not going to. And that can be done selectively here and there. Go to the planting station that you suspect, dig around a bit, not every planting station, but here and there. You'll dig around and you'll find that it's rotted or it's been eaten. Then you can confirm, yeah, something is happening here. I'll go and fill in these. I'll do my gapping.
Charles, you have something to add?
You've alluded to soaking being advantageous, and I'm wondering why I wouldn't soak as I start planting.
Yes.
The very first time.
That's another option that you have, that your seeds can be soaked. Because it's interesting that if the growth process can begin in the house, you've gained a couple of hours. You're kind of ahead of everybody else. Yeah. So that's
But it shouldn't be more than 6 or 8 hours.
Yeah.
The radicle should not protrude. The first root should not come out. Otherwise, in the process of handling it, you'll break it, and that one's done.
Right. Another topic subtopic that I want to cover is weeding, because this is another key thing that we must be so disciplined about, and which is weeding. We recommend weeding every 14 days, no more than 14 days. Every 14 days, weeding should be done. Why 14 days? Because 14 days is sufficient period to ensure that your weeds at least do not get to the point where they probably start developing seed, and that they're young enough and easy to uproot. The uprootion is simple. I mean, you just uproot and make sure you pull it out with the roots. And then once you've done that, you can add it to your mulch. So it kind of comes on top of your mulch. Are we together? So you have your mulch, the weeds are coming off. 14 days, you won't have too much or too many seeds. It's easy to cover large areas. Just pulling and throwing it on top as additional mulch. Eventually it will dry up and it will form part of the mulch. Eventually it will disintegrate and just continue to help in the process of restoring your land. Right? But what is the period maximum? 14 days. Don't go beyond 14 days, otherwise you completely mess up. The longer you leave your weeding, the more problematic the weeds become. It gets to a point now, you probably now have to start using the djembe, or if you have someone working in the farm, they'll probably not do what you want them to do. They won't do this. Or if they come with a jembe, they won't do the shaving. They will come. I think all of us have had experience with people who want to farm. Even the seedlings that you want to grow eventually get uprooted because of the way the weeding is being done. Right? So weeding, very, very critical. Top dressing. We had mentioned that if you are able to do 500 mils of base soil fertilizer, how many understand what base soil fertilizer is? We've basically been talking about inputs, but I'm now introducing a new term here, which is no different. Fertilizer is just whatever fertilizers. So it can be organic or it can be inorganic. And we said if you have 500 mils of organic input, you probably don't need to apply top dressing because it will be sufficient to push the crop to maturity up to the point where you harvest. But if you applied 350 mLs, then you've not given it sufficient nutrients. And there are periods in which your maize actually needs additional food or nutrients. It's just like us. Normally when it gets to 1 o'clock, we need something extra. And then when it gets to supper time, we need something extra, right? For maize, that extra is normally at the point at which they are about knee-high, when they're beginning to get the foliage really coming out. And also at about the time when there is this thing we like to call the flower. How many know the flower of the maize? Yeah, the tassel?